Hello, my name is Matt and this is part 2 of my E3 2014 Sarcasm Jamboree, in which I go over the major media events of E3, instead of looking at some of the more important, interesting or irritating things to have happened in the week's gaming news like I usually do. This week's video is all about the Sony conference, which opened immediately with the cinematic trailer for Destiny, featuring the voice of Peter Dinklage, which told us a whole load of stuff about the game's setting and a whole load of nothing about how it actually plays. Another Game of Thrones character then appeared in the form of Sony's Master of Coin and Lord of Harrenhal, Andrew House, who officially opened the proceedings. He then pushed a woman through a trapdoor to her death onto jagged rocks hundreds of feet below the stage. Actually he didn't though, it would have been a really memorable event if he had. Instead he announced that access to the Destiny Alpha was available immediately, albeit only for PS4 owners, and that the game will be available in a bundle with a white PS4 from September 9th. Unless Destiny gets delayed of course, then it will be the Watch Dogs bundle all over again. One thing they didn't show in the trailer is how god-awful some of the dialogue is and how horribly it's wasted on an actor of such calibre as Peter Dinklage. So I'm going to do it for them.
The Hive haven't been on Earth in centuries. That wizard came from the moon.
Now in Dinklage's defence, he is playing the role of a sort of AI robot type thing, and you don't really expect much in the way of emotion from machines. One presumes they will eventually tweak his in-game dialogue to make it sound more robotic, like it does in the trailer.
That is, until I found you.
Even so, the line still sounds like it came from an early reader's book for children under 3. Unlike this footage from The Order 1886, which is most definitely not for precious little kiddywinks, showcasing amongst other things the finely detailed Victorian environments and how the game transitions almost entirely seamlessly between cutscenes and gameplay. It also brings a touch of gothic horror to the proceedings. The snippet on show had a mustachioed protagonist exploring a dark and spooky mental asylum, because no other type of mental asylum exists in video games, before discovering a zombie that hulks out and immediately defenestrates him. It looked very atmospheric though, and highly evocative of gaslit foggy Victorian London, although my immersion was dented somewhat by the protagonist muttering the word fuck at one point. That sort of language is simply unbecoming of a Victorian gentleman. Up next was Entwined from Pixel Opus, Sony's newest internal studio made up of recent graduates from Carnegie Mellon and San Jose State University. Visually reminiscent of Dyad on the PS3, it's supposedly about two souls in love who can't be together, represented by a neon fish and a glow-in-the-dark bird. Of course they can't be together, one's a fish and the other's a bird. Christ, you try persuading a fish and a bird to get it on. All you'll end up with is a drowned bird and a confused fish. Anyway, these two wildly disparate creatures apparently have to race down a tunnel representing 9 different lifetimes to collect enough energy to transform into a dragon. No, I'm not making that up. That's damn near exactly what the bloke introducing the game said it was about.
It's a game about two souls who are in love but can't be together. Over the course of 9 unique lifetimes, you'll have to bring these characters together. And when you do, they'll transform into an incredible dragon.
See, told you. Don't know what any of it means exactly, but it looks pretty and is out now on PS4. Then we were introduced to Infamous First Light, a piece of standalone DLC for Infamous Second Son that takes place before the events of the main game. A prequel in other words, albeit a prequel you don't need the full game to play, which is nice. And instead of playing as smug Seattle tosspot Delsin, you get to play as Mopey Abigail, whose superpowers are all neon related. Which I suppose is a great superpower to have if you have a fondness for 1980s nightclubs. Before I could get too cynical, we were introduced to Little Big Planet 3, developed not by Media Molecule but by Sheffield-based Sumo Digital instead. It looks a lot like Little Big Planet 1 and 2 of course, albeit in higher resolution, although Sumo have expanded the gameplay a bit with some new playable characters who all have their own unique special abilities. Like Oddsock, who looks like a dog but is also a sock and who can wall jump, just like real dogs can't. There's also Swoop, a bird made from, I don't know, underpants or something, who can fly, obviously, what with him being a bird and all. And finally there's Toggle, a giant of a fabric man who can shrink like he's been in the wash too long. What else can I say other than it looks charming and lovely? Oh, I know, you can also use all your favourite LBP 1 and 2 content with it as well since it's backwards compatible. Look, I just can't bring myself to be nasty about it, okay? It's hardwired into my brain. Look, I'll prove it to you. Fuck, wrong way round. Aha! So yeah, it looks charming and nice and all that guff, but it's just more Little Big Planet, isn't it? More colourful levels, more bloody stickers, more bloody sack... Anyhow, Shuei Yoshida then arrived on stage to announce Bloodborne, formerly known as Project Beast. which was something of a whopping great leap from Little Big Planet, a bit like going from a Disney marathon to a Dario Argento one, but I digress. Bloodborne! It's From Software's new game with Hidetaka Miyazaki at the helm, another game in the vein of Demon's Souls and Dark Souls, with a gothic Victorian horror aesthetic instead of a dark fantasy one. Sadly, for card-carrying members of the PC gaming master race like myself, it's PS4 exclusive, although I would buy a PS4 for this. And Little Big Planet 3. Hello? Yes, I'd like to buy a basic PS4 bundle and pre-order a couple of games for it, please. Excellent. Right, first game I want to pre-order is Bloodborne by... Yeah, I'm a Dark Souls fan. Was it that obvious? Ah, great, thanks. Okay, and the other game I'd like to pre-order is Little Big Planet 3. No, I don't have any children. Alex Hutchinson from Ubisoft then came out to show off some gameplay for Far Cry 4, which all looks very familiar to anyone who's played Far Cry 3. It's got all the vehicles, weapons and explosions you'd expect from a Far Cry title, although it's now in a mountainous Himalayan setting, so you'll hopefully be able to get some decent use out of the wingsuit this time round. Which also makes me wonder why you'd even bother trying to drive a car around, except to maybe record footage for a top 10 inevitable mountain road disasters in Far Cry 4 montage. Particularly since you can now also fire your weapons while driving. At least there are also some lowland areas on the map for you to drive around in or ride an elephant through. That is when you're not goading them into destroying enemy bases for you like the tigers in Far Cry 3. One significant addition is drop-in 2-player co-op where a friend or stranger can play as Herc, a bloke with a beard and a gyrocopter. So if you ever felt a bit lonely killing scores of faceless mercenaries in previous Far Cry titles, you can now bring in a friend and kill scores of native soldiers together. People can join your game even if they don't own Far Cry 4, so your friends really have no excuse not to come and play with you. Unless they don't own a PS4. Enthusiastic Adam Boyes, president of Sony Developer Relations, then arrived to pander to Reddit and NeoGAF before showing off a whole bunch of games, both old and new. Starting with the trailer for Dead Island 2, which was a much more accurate representation of what the series is about than that trailer for Dead Island 1 was. You know, the one with the girl getting chucked out of the window. No heartfelt emotions and sad music here, just a bunch of zombies getting killed. Before a bloke who sounds a lot like Jack Black, but isn't, steals a pair of trainers off one of them. Then there was some gameplay for Battlefield Hardline, which we thought we'd seen everything of in that trailer that got leaked a few weeks ago. Turns out it actually looks less like an urban cops vs robbers skirmish and more like a mod for Battlefield 4, set in a world where police officers and criminals all pack enough weaponry to start an international incident. Next up was a bit about a collector's edition of Disney Infinity 2 with Marvel characters for PS3 and PS4, during which Adam Boyes talked about a partnership with Disney. To be honest, I sort of stopped paying attention during this bit. After that we got the now requisite montage of indie games such as Magicka 2 coming to PS4 and PC, as well as a bunch of Devolver Digital games like Broforce, Not a Hero, Hotline Miami Wrong Number, Titan Souls and The Talos Principle. There was also the world premiere of Abzu by new indie studio Giant Squid, with a beautiful score by Austin Wintory and visuals courtesy of Matt Nava, the art director of Journey. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Remember that Disney partnership Adam Boyes mentioned during the Disney Infinity 2 segment? The one I fell asleep during? Well, more fool me for not realising the glorious implications of it. Because Grim Fandango, the classic film noir PC adventure set in the land of the dead, is back from the dead. Madre de Dios, it's a Christmas miracle, and a remastered one at that, coming to PS4 and PS Vita. And hopefully its rightful home on PC eventually, if there's any justice in this life, or indeed the next. During all this was a trailer for Suda51's new game called Let It Die, which looked less like a game and more like a montage of Fox News clips to go with a special report on the evils of video games. Needless to say, I wasn't particularly impressed. One thing that did impress me, and damn near everybody else, was a chunk of footage for No Man's Sky by Guildford-based Hello Games. An amazing looking, ambitious sci-fi sandbox with a procedurally generated galaxy, in which you explore strange new worlds, catalogue new life, and fly around in a spaceship shooting the crap out of asteroids and other ships. If any game at this year's E3 deserved to be called awe-inspiring, then No Man's Sky is it. It's visually beautiful, mind-bogglingly ambitious, and genuinely exciting to behold. It looks like the realisation of that dream old people like me had when we played Elite for the first time, and wondered how cool it would be to actually walk around on all those planets we visited. Whether No Man's Sky's gameplay will have sufficient depth to keep people playing long term remains to be seen, however. Nevertheless, I'm confident in what Hello Games have shown so far, and I'm really looking forward to playing the end result. After that, the rest of the conference seemed pale and anemic by comparison. Lord Andrew of House returned to the stage to introduce a segment about hardware, with nods to Project Morpheus and a PS camera of all things. Then came a procession of people to talk about other stuff like Share Factory, Twitch and Ustream spectating, direct YouTube uploading, PlayStation TV, a Ratchet & Clank movie and Netflix, all of which I really wasn't paying much attention to. Although that bit about a TV show based on the comic book series Powers sounded nice. After all that tedious nonsense, it was back to the game, starting with X. Yes, it's officially X and not 10, even though X is the Roman numeral for 10 and it is the 10th main game in the series. And instead of a cinematic trailer, we got some actual bloody gameplay this time, emphasis on the bloody, showcasing things like environmental traversals, environmental weapons and other stuff alluded to in that cinematic trailer released previously. Alright, so the stuff in the cinematic trailer I said was probably just for show and not in the game is actually in the game. I'll happily admit I was wrong on that observation. Jesus, just don't come crying to me next time some other trailer flat out lies to you. You'll get no sympathy from me. Anyhow, along with all that, X has all the gibbety goodness you know and love from the series, like X-rays and fatalities that still make me flinch a little whenever I see them, particularly the ones involving shattered vertebrae. Ooh. And they say video games desensitize people. There was then a brief clip for The Last of Us Remastered coming for PS4 in July, which looks pretty much like The Last of Us for PS3, only a bit sharper. After which was the world debut of a new music video for Mike Oldfield's Nuclear, cunningly disguised as a cinematic trailer for Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. World debut, that is, for the 5 people who didn't know it got leaked the day before and had already been around the internet a million times before the Sony conference had even started. For hardcore fans, this was over 5 minutes of concentrated pleasure in CGI form, no doubt jam-packed with subtle nods and winks to the other Metal Gear games. Meanwhile, for someone like me who vowed never to touch the series again after Metal Gear Solid 2 gave me a headache, it was visually and musically compelling enough to make me consider giving this one a go. It'll be complete and utter nonsense of course, but at least Kojima makes entertaining nonsense. And he can always be satisfied knowing he introduced a whole new generation to the music of Mike Oldfield. As the presentation wound down, there was the announcement that a remastered GTA 5 will be coming to the PS4 this autumn. It's also coming to Xbox One, but Andrew House didn't mention that of course, instead saying that PS3 and Xbox 360 players will be able to transfer their online progress to the PS4 version, presumably also the Xbox One version. And presumably for the PC version, which has also been confirmed. Yes, peasants, your precious little GTA 5 is coming to PC the way God intended. Not so insolent now, are we? Speaking of open world games, there was some actual gameplay footage of Batman Arkham Knight in a Gotham City that appears to be populated by regular people as well as criminals and psychotics. It certainly looks a lot bigger than previous Batman outings, although I'm not sure what to think about a Batmobile that can transform into a hover tank. Are you sure those missiles count as non-lethal weapons, Batman? My parents are dead. No, Batman, you can't keep answering every difficult question with "my parents are dead." It doesn't work like that. Closing the whole event off was a trailer for Uncharted 4: A Thief's End that looked CGI to all buggery, although Naughty Dog claim it was all entirely in-engine. Considering Naughty Dog also insisted they weren't working on a PS4 remake of The Last of Us, while at the same time working on the PS4 remake of The Last of Us, forgive me for not immediately believing everything they say. Sure, it said captured directly from PS4, but that doesn't mean anything and you'd be a fool to believe it. It's like believing a movie you just watched was live theatre performed by tiny little people inside your telly. Anyway, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End, a title that heavily implies it might actually be the last adventure of Nathan Drake. Although I wouldn't put any money on the smarmy sod actually dying. Compared to Microsoft's presentation, the Sony E3 media event was a more relaxed affair, some might even say complacent, hence the bits about PS TV and all that other non-gaming guff. Though I suppose you can afford to be a little bit complacent when you're outselling your rival by about 2 million units. It was a confident presentation from a company that knows it's ahead, knows it doesn't need to fight quite so hard, and that it can afford to relax a little. Compared to the gritted teeth determination of Microsoft's presentation, however, which was leaner and more focused, Sony's presentation was more nonchalant and sort of meandered around a bit, and also came perilously close to being smug at times. Basically, imagine a version of the movie Rocky where Sony's conference is Apollo Creed and Microsoft's is Rocky Balboa, Only instead of that bit in the script that says Apollo Creed wins, the movie just fades to credits, leaving it to the audience to decide who won and what that even means. That's all for this episode of Pixel Burn. If you liked it, please do let me know, and let your friends, your family, and the collection of creepy dolls in your attic know as well. At the very least, I hope you found it tolerable. If you didn't like it, however, then you may still yet enjoy my recap of Nintendo's online presentation, streamy, doodad thing, which is coming next week. After that, I plan to take a week off to recuperate before returning to your regularly scheduled dose of weekly gaming news. Until then, you can go now.